So here's a close-up of that card we're going to be making today. So press the words and the little heart lights up. Isn't that so cool? And this is another variation of the same design. So just instead of the red card base, this is kind of more black and gray. So you don't have to do a red light, you could also do a white light as well. For the video, we're going to be doing the red. Now, this is, of course, made with the awesome new Geared Up Garage set. Love this, love this. This is perfect for just about anybody. Especially love the gears in this set, is really cool. So specifically, we're going to be using the car. We're also going to be using this kind of cool shape right here. You could cut the car out if you want to, but you don't have to. Besides this set, we're also going to be using a few things from the Meant to Be suite. Now, if you don't have this one, you can use any other heart that you might have for this. Just depending on what you have, it may be a little tricky to get it right in that particular spot. But for this one, I'm using the smaller of the plain hearts. And then from the stamp set, I'm just using that little tiny heart stamp just for adding to that smoke, which you don't have to, but I thought it added kind of a fun effect. All right, moving on. So besides that, we're going to stamp with some good old Memento Basic Black and some Basic Gray. We're going to need a tiny piece of vellum just for that little window. Our foam adhesive sheets. Of course, a piece of real red for our card base is what we're going to be using. A small piece of the basic gray. If you don't have this shade, you can also use the smoky slate as well. So either will work. And then we're also going to be using 3 pieces of Whisper White for the front, the circuitry, and also for a sentiment for the inside. All right, to color that really awesome card, you really have your preference. Now for this particular one, I colored it using the Real Red marker. If you're not really feeling that, you can also, of course, use our wonderful new Blends markers. They do an awesome job coloring this in. So this is an example of that with the Cherry Cobbler blends. So really, or if you wanted your car a different color, you could do that as well. If you wanted to do this card, say, with another car set, like this one from Country Living, you could also do that as well. All right, so we've got those down. Of course, we're going to be using a little multi-purpose liquid glue. And you're going to want a pencil, too, to mark your lines. And then, of course, our circuitry components. We're going to be using a little red Chibitronics LED light sticker. These things are amazing. If you haven't seen my other videos with these, do check those out. And some copper peel and stick tape. And the last thing is, of course, our little tiny batteries. Now, I prefer this size, the 1220. You can also use the bigger ones, oh, I don't have one handy. I believe it's 2420, which work just as well. I just like the smaller ones because they work better with the dimensional strips to give you that height for that push button action. All right. Now, if you didn't catch all of those products, I'm going to cut for a brief moment to show you a quick list of all the products we're going to be using, so you can have that handy list since I forgot to do Post-it notes. Okay, now we're back. If you did not get all of those products written down, there's also a full description of all the products in this video with direct links in the video description below. So you can just check that out and support me by shopping at my store. So let's go ahead and get this card started. We're of course going to have our red card base. We're going to have 3 pieces cut. The Whisper White, this is at 5 inches by 3 3/4. We've got our little strip of Basic Gray cut at 2 inches by 4 1/4. All right, you guys got all of that. Now we're going to go ahead and use, get that off, our Geared Up Garage set to go ahead and cut out this little fun shape using a little scrap of the real red. It kind of makes a really fun border, just like that. Have that done. And then, of course, we have our sentiment, the You Jumpstart My Heart, which I just love. With that set, we're going to go ahead and stamp that with our basic gray. And then go ahead and cut that out using that same die. So, going to stamp it on just a scrap of Whisper White. Yeah. Boom. And this is a scrap in another shape, but this works. So just like that. And then you're going to take it in your Big Shot. We're going to line it up. You can see that. To where you have your sentiment lined up, just like that, and run it through. It'll punch out that center. You'll also get a little nice little white border for another project later. Okay? So you guys got that. So we've got all of our pieces ready to go. Oh, here it is. Nope, that's the wrong one. There it is. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and use the piece that I already had pre-colored using the blends. Now, of course, you can always use the marker. I figure you guys don't necessarily want to watch me sit here and color it, so I'm going to just go ahead and use that one. Now, for deciding where to cut out that heart, I kind of just picked that upper right quadrant. Now, you can stamp first and then cut out the heart, or vice versa. It doesn't really matter on the order for that, just so you guys know. All right, so we go ahead and we've got our red. I'm just going to go ahead and add that strip of gray real quick because it's just very quick and easy. Get that background done. Sometimes that glue needs a little shaking. Here we go. A little glue. And just stick that on the corner. If you want, you could also emboss this too, would be really cool. Just like that. Nice and simple. And now we're going to have a piece of Whisper White for our background. Now this is for our circuitry. If you want to go ahead and glue that down, before you do that, you want to line it up just like that. And we want to trace where that heart is. The reason being, if you trace it, then when we take it off here in a minute, when you're doing the circuitry, you know exactly where you want to stick that sticker. Eyeballing it later is really tricky, so just go ahead and do that little guide before we stick the vellum on the back. All right, we set that aside. So we've got our car, it's stamped and colored, we've got our heart. Let's go ahead and stamp that fun smoke using this like really cool ink splotch. I think it's supposed to be like an ink, you know, grease stain or something, but it actually works really well for smoke as well. So we're going to just ink that up. Okay, ink that up. Now the other trick, so you want to get it looking like it's coming out from behind the car, but you don't actually want to ink up your entire car. So what I recommend doing is you take a Post-it note, and after you have stamped your car, go ahead and stamp it on a Post-it note and just cut it out. You don't have to do the whole car. I actually cut more than I needed. You just want the back half. And we're going to use that as a mask. And we're just going to cover it over just like that. If you don't have a Post-it note, you can use a scrap of paper and just like hold it with washi tape or something. And that way when I stamp that smoke from behind, it's not going to ink up the back of my car, and it's going to kind of give it a look like it's coming from behind. So it doesn't really matter which way you position the stamp, but we're just going to go ahead and stamp that just like that. I'm going to do it one more time, kind of make it look like, there you go, smoke kind of coming off, a little all over. There we go, just like that. So you can see it protected that little fender of the car. Now the other thing that I thought kind of added to the look of this is using this little tiny heart to kind of look like the, you know, exhaust is heart. So depending on how you do this, yours might look a little different. I'm just going to stamp 1 or 2 little hearts just kind of out of the smoke here. Kind of add to that Valentine's look. There you go. And just stamp off 1 or 2. There you go. So you can kind of see, it just kind of gives it a little effect, but you don't have to do the heart if you don't want to. All right, moving on. Now we already have our sentiment stamped out in that gray as well. And we've got our little background ready to go. So I'm going to go ahead and attach that right here. So you can see the red border, it fits so snugly in there, just like that. So let's go ahead and glue that down. Now for this card, I'm using the position of the sentiment to be where my push button is for the light. If you don't want that, you can also do the car as well, but that's why I'm sticking it up in this top corner. Just like that. Boom. Okay. And we're gonna add some glue to that. We're just gonna nestle it right in there. Fits perfectly. A little glue on the outside. There we go. Okay. So we've got our basic card front done. And just depending on where you stamp the card, yours might look a little different. And now we're going to go ahead and add that little scrap of vellum to the back. Now really with vellum, a little goes a long way. I still have a pack of vellum I've been slowly working on, and you guys have seen how many light up stuff I have done. So a little vellum goes a really long way, and you don't need very much. We're just going to cut a little strip, and we're going to adhere it to the back and cover it up. This kind of just gives the light a little diffused look, so you're not just staring straight at that circuit. It also kind of protects it too. Just add a little glue around the edge, and boom. So now we have our little window. Now you want to definitely draw your reference heart before putting the vellum on. Otherwise, it's going to be kind of hard. You're going to be having to eyeball it. All right, so now we've got this front part done. We're going to set that aside for now. We're going to go on to our circuitry component. Now, there's a couple different ways you can do this. If you want, you could do the folded corner push button like we did with the lighthouse. If you're not familiar with what I'm talking about, and then you can go back and check out that video. But for this one, I'm going to do something a little different, and this is just to show a different way that you can do that. Okay, so of course, I'm putting my light right there. X marks the spot, and my push button is going to be over here. So about here is where I want that battery to sit. So instead of folding the paper over, because sometimes depending on your project that might mess it up, I'm just going to take a small piece of just scrap paper. It doesn't really matter what color, it just happened to be white. It's about 1 inch, and it's just kind of leftover I had. And I'm going to fold it over just like a little sandwich, just like that. And I'm going to glue it right on top of my X, and that's where I want that battery to sit. And actually, we don't necessarily need the card base for that, so we'll just move it off the side for now. So boom, just like that. Okay, so instead of having the folded piece, this is going to act as that folded piece for pushing the battery. If you don't want to have the crease on the bottom, it can also go on the other side. It'll just affect slightly how you do the copper tape. So we're going to go ahead and pull out our copper tape. Love this stuff. A little practice and you will be an expert at it. We're going to go ahead and grab a battery as well. So you definitely want to make sure however big your scrap is, it's big enough that when you close, it covers the battery. Holds it in there really good. All right, so we're going to do 2 lines with our copper strip. One is going to be our negative line and one is going to be our positive line. Now, if you're not familiar with circuitry, you don't really have to be. You can just follow this exact same pattern. So what we're going to do is we're going to do 1 strip. We're going to start on the bottom of our box. It's going to be the bottom of our battery. We're going to pull it across. Okay, and then once we get the top of our heart, we're going to fold up. And I like to use the strip just to kind of press it so I don't get my fingers sticky. And then fold down. And it'll be going right over where our X is for our little battery. Or not, excuse me, our little light. Okay. So once I've got it where I want it, okay, I'm going to just take it and tear it. Now this stuff is really thin, so it is pretty easy to tear. Just like that. Okay, and then I'm going to just press it down with my nail or bone folder. All right, then we're going to take another piece, and we're going to go from the top inside of that little flap, press it down, fold over. Okay, now just be careful when you go over this bump. You don't want it to be so taut that it breaks when you press it, so just a little gentle, there we go. So you just test it, move it, make sure it's not breaking when you fold it over. All right, and then we're going to fold it to the left, give it a press, fold it back on itself. Go. If you have trouble doing corners, you can tear it and just apply it on top of itself. That is an option. All right, and now to go up, we're going to fold it down. So we always fold the opposite way you want it to go, and then we're going to fold back up. Now, we don't want our two lines to actually touch. We're going to leave a tiny bit of space between. So we want it close, but just not touching. Now, if you mess up, you can tear the little extra, but we're just going to go like that. And go tear it just like that. Okay, so we've got our lines all ready to go and ready for that battery. Move that off to the side. Sorry, not battery, light. Okay, new mom brain. Okay, so we've got our tiny little light. So on this particular circuit, the battery is going to be sitting. And so our negative side is going to be on this line, and our positive side of the battery is going through this line. So if you look on these tiny little lights, and it can be hard to see, there is a little positive and negative. If you don't know, basically the top of the triangle is the negative side and the flatter side is the positive. So if you can't see that, it just basically is like that. So for here, the connects for the battery are on the top and the bottom. So you want the top negative part to touch that top corner and the bottom to touch here, okay? So we're going to carefully peel this off from the little backing. And try not to touch it too much. You don't want to lose the stick. And you want to apply it to where you've got both pieces of that copper touching. I probably placed it a little low, but it'll be okay. All right, and then we're just going to give it a little press down with a fingernail just to make sure it's on there good. Now mine's a little crooked, but it'll be fine. All right, and then we're going to, next step is to give it a test. So we're going to fold it over and see if the little light is twinkling. If the little light does not twinkle, first thing, I would check all of your lines, make sure they're nice and sealed, there's no breaks in your line. Next thing I would do is make sure you don't have the battery upside down. That happens more often than you think. And then also just make sure that when you put those down that you actually were touching each piece of the copper line and that there's not a connect in the center. All right, if you're still having troubles, do check out my troubleshooting video. I've got a couple other tips, but that should kind of cover most of the basics. So we've got that line all done. So now we're going to go ahead and grab our dimensional strips. Love these things. These are perfect for this kind of thing. So we're going to go ahead and build a little nest for our battery. Now this will keep it from sliding, from coming loose, and making sure it is staying right where we want it to be. So we're just going to cut a bunch of little tiny sections out of that dimensional strip. Just like so. And there's not really a right or wrong way to do the little battery nest. You just want to make sure that when you close it, it doesn't go anywhere. Okay. All right. So, other thing, before peeling off the tops and sealing it, I always like to give it another test just to make sure it did not slide. Once you like where it is, you're going to peel off the top of the dimensional strips, just like so. And give it a nice gentle press just to give it a seal. Another little test, so there we go. Now we're going to go ahead and grab our top piece, and this is where the magic happens. Lay it on top, and you can see right there, thankfully I lined it up pretty good, that where the words are is where the button is. So we press, and boom! Our little heart lights up. So very, very cool. So now we're going to go ahead and finish putting the rest of the card together. Now, to make sure that the battery does not get hit and you want to have enough space, we're going to add some more dimensionals all around real quick. So we're just going to finish up this card with a few more dimensionals, put it together, and we are almost done. Now, the other good thing about having that heart drawn is when you're placing your dimensionals, you can be sure not to put any where the window is, so they're going to peek through. Do one on that corner, and I think we are good. Okay. We got all the corners, so it's nice and even. Okay, so it's just going to sit flush. Since it's the same size paper in the Whisper White, you just need to line up the corners. And if after you line it up and glue it down, if you have any of the underpiece peeking through, you can just take your scissors and trim it down so that you don't have a double edge. Just like that. That makes sense. Okay, so you just want the one edge showing, and I did not line mine up perfectly, so I'll just trim that real quick. There we go. Boom. Done. All right. Now we're just going to add that to our card base. Let's use some Tombow on that. There we go. Make sure we got a amount of space on all the sides. And then just using our last piece of Whisper White, we're just going to do an inside. Now, of course, you can stamp on this and do some nice sentiment, but I at least want to have a good blank for writing a note. So, there we go. So we are done. Thanks, guys, for watching. To purchase all the supplies used in this video, see the direct links in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. If you missed the pre-order kit for this particular card, don't worry. Provided I had a decent amount of participation, I will be doing another one. So do follow my channel to catch the next one. Thanks, guys.